Welcome to the cutest television show you'll see all month. It's Baby Animal Day on the program. In a moment, we'll talk with the chicken lady herself about her peeps that she's brought in, as well as how to keep your chicks dry, warm, and snugly soft. Good afternoon and welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Spring is a time of awakening and new life. And if having chicks in the studio isn't enough of a clue what our theme today is, then our first story should cinch it. Ben Willis recently visited Shelburne Farm to meet some of the newest additions to the farm who weren't sheepish about introducing themselves to the camera.
It's lambing season at Shelburne Farms. Over the course of this year, the 77 ewes at the farm will have given birth to around 140 lambs. Sam Dixon, the farm manager, oversees all operations at the dairy, including managing the farm's sheep flock.
We've had one set of quadruplets and some triplets, but mostly twins, and a few singles. These are really good, hardy sheep for New England that do very well in our climate, have twins, good moms.
Raising lambs, even in such an idyllic location, is not without its problems.
Sheep are really susceptible to internal parasites, meaning worms, and so you have to be really careful how you graze them and where you graze them and how intensively you're using the land, because you can get parasite buildup, and that can really have a real profound impact on the health of the ewe and the lambs also.
But through thoughtful grazing practices, the farm has been able to mitigate this challenge.
By having both cows and sheep, it allows us to graze them in different rotations and then help break that parasite cycle that I talked about. We could graze the heifers on a pasture one year and then graze the sheep on them the next year, and then the heifers again the year after. And that way the sheep parasites don't have a chance to establish and the levels to grow.
This year, Sam has also been confronted with a shepherd's age-old challenge: predation.
We had a coyote attack this fall, and we lost 6 ewes and rams over 2 nights. And so we had never really experienced that level of predation from coyotes, but that's a real concern for us going forward. I talked to some other sheep breeders who were having an increased problem with coyotes. That seemed to be what the sheep raisers were talking about this year. Coyote, maybe we just have gotten a much larger population, and the coyotes that have moved in have gotten a taste for lamb. I always understood that if the coyotes didn't bother your sheep, then you didn't bother the coyotes. And we had this deal for the 10, 15 years that we raised the sheep here, that we wouldn't bother the coyotes and they wouldn't bother our sheep. And the coyotes broke the deal this fall. So we're going to try to have hotter fences, and we're also going to install some lights, like safety lights, basically motion detecting lights that go off and to scare the coyotes away. But it's going to be a challenge.
What is clear is Sam has a passion and great respect for the livestock under his care.
You know, it's a very important time in these animals' lives, and we like to treat them with respect and give them their space for lambing and give them the opportunity to go through this pretty profound experience. You just have to be really careful about that they're getting adequate minerals, but they do very, very well on an all-grass diet, and they're really well adapted to our climate, and they do very, very well in New England.
Knowing where your food comes from is a valuable lesson, and the farm utilizes these sheep and other aspects of its operation to teach.
Shelburne Farms is a farm-based education organization, and the farm is part of the working classroom that we use. We just had a group of teachers here this weekend looking at some of our pasturing and forest management, and I'll be talking with a group from Champlain Valley Union next week, and then we also have classes from UVM come, and then also little kids come too. So there's a lot of different programming around what we're doing here.
If you come for a visit, just be warned, you may leave wishing you could bring one of these lambs home. At Shelburne Farms, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
Thanks to Ben Willis for that story, but back here in studio, the chicks are still peeping away. I'm joined by UVM Extension 4-H educator in St. Albans, Martha Manning. A couple of weeks ago, Martha introduced us to Henrietta the hen, who fell asleep while we were recording, but I don't think the same is going to happen for these chicks. Martha, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. My Peeps and I are glad to be here.
And obviously they're active birds here. How do you care for a chick?
So these chicks that we have here today, there's 5 different breeds in our little corral. And they're about 4 days old, so really feed, water, and warmth are the most important things for chicks at this age.
And of course, they're hard not to want to interact with a little bit, but how should you pick up a chick to make sure it stays safe?
Just like you did, and then you want to kind of cup your hand over it so it doesn't like jump out of
Make
your
a
hand.
run for it?
Right, and the other thing with handling chicks is to wash your hands, especially after you handle the chick, and it's especially true for young children because they have a habit of putting their fingers around their face and in their mouth. So, it's just a good practice to wash your hands after you handle chicks or any young animal.
So very, very cute animals, of course, but maybe something to be somewhat cautious about if you're a kid.
Exactly.
And of course, they're very young, and as any of your students in 4-H embryology could tell us, they need maybe a little help staying warm. What's your advice for keeping them warm?
So I use what are called heat plates. It kind of looks like an upside down cookie sheet with legs on it, and you adjust the legs as the chicks grow. So the chicks go underneath it, very much like they would go underneath a mother hen, and they get the warmth from that plate. Those plates heat to about 90 degrees, so you can touch them, you're not going to get burned. Many people still use heat lamps, which are a red lamp, and they heat, they're very, very hot, and if you touch them, you'll get burned. They also use about 250 watts of electricity, so they are not very energy efficient. Power companies love them because the dial just spins. But they're very dangerous as far as fire. If they were to get knocked into the bedding, they would cause a fire. And we see fires every year in Vermont that are caused by heat lamps. So while the heat plates are a more expensive investment up front, your insurance company will love you, and your coop or even your home are much safer with the heat plates.
Yeah, it could potentially save you a lot of trouble.
They also make what's called a heat pad. They're flat, and the chicks actually sit on them. These chicks actually came out of a brooder that had a heat pad and a heat plate, and they preferred to go under the plate.
All right. And how about water? How much water do one of them drink?
So water, I keep chick waterer, chick font in with these chicks, and I change the water every day. You also want to be sure that, when you clean the waterer, to keep it clean. And as they grow, I add larger water containers. So always having water and feed is important for the chicks.
Okay, and you mentioned feed already. What do these chicks eat?
These chicks, because these, you can buy what are called vaccinated chicks or unvaccinated chicks. It's a personal preference. These are vaccinated chicks. So I feed them
Making a run for it.
a non-medicated feed. So, you know, it's up to the individual producer what type of feed they use, but there are special chick starters, and those are, you know, nutritionally balanced for chicks. So, you know, it's important to have those, that feed for them.
And we mentioned already you should wash your hands after handling them, and you just talked about vaccinations as well. Can you tell me a little, bird flu's been in the news recently? Is that something you should be concerned about?
Bird flu is in the news, and it's important for people to be aware bird flu exists. These chicks come from a certified poultry house, so for now they're kind of safe from bird flu. But if you've got a flock and you free range that flock and you let it outside, be aware that, you know, it's not really a good thing, especially waterfowl, wild waterfowl. If you're near a waterway or a pond, now they've learned a trick. You know, you don't want those wild birds eating with your birds. So, you know, don't encourage ducks and geese to frequent the same water or feed that you have for your chicks, and maybe even keep your flock inside for a period of time until they're kind of done their migratory process.
And a lot of people will get their chicks from maybe a supplier, or sometimes they'll even come in the mail. What's the first thing you should do when you get them home?
When you get those if you mail order chicks, and people are like, oh, how can they mail order chicks? Right before chicks hatch, they absorb the residual yolk that is still in the egg, and so that they absorb that through the umbilical, and that is their food and nourishment for the first 2 to 3 days. So by the time you get chicks in the mail, and they're shipped priority mail, so these chicks actually, it took them under 2 days to get from Iowa to St. Albans, Vermont. And so when they are unpacked, I have the brooders are already warmed up for them, and they have feed already out for them, and the water solution that we use the first couple days has an electrolyte solution in it, kind of like Gatorade. It gives them a little boost, and it gets them off to a good start.
All right, and unfortunately that's all the time we have today, but if you're interested in learning any more about these chicks or anything about the 4-H embryology program, you can call the number on the screen. And that takes care of Across the Fence for today. From the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX, I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.